this edition of the Mad Cow Morning News Show. Two seemingly separate stories, which may ultimately prove to provide glimpses of the same inky, many-tentacled octopus. First, did a rogue state owing allegiance to no nation on earth fix the 2004 American presidential election? And yes, Osama bin Laden's latest trouble with European authorities. Is Florida a rogue state? The question may seem facetious, but doesn't it seem that the Sunshine State has begun to wear out its welcome with the rest of the country by pursuing its dream of being a playground for international intrigue? First, the state couldn't count the votes, then they were training terrorists, and now the Sunshine State is the site of an alleged plot to fix electronic voting machines nationwide. And speaking of terrorists, big spook news, look at this. What was the owner of the Florida flight school which trained both Mohammed Atta and Marwan al-Shehhi, the terrorist pilots who together took down the World Trade Center, doing in Cuba, presenting a diamond-beveled Rolex to one of Fidel Castro's top aides? Innocent flight school owner or international operative? That's Wally Hilliard, caught on camera in Havana, Cuba, strapping a diamond-beveled Rolex to Comandante Guillermo Garcia Frias, a top Fidel Castro lieutenant. Hilliard had a bag of Rolexes to pass out in Havana as tokens of somebody's esteem, we heard. Hilliard was representing the Mormon Church of Utah, looking to buy a 10,000-acre cattle ranch in anticipation of Cuba's becoming open to Americans again. After attention was drawn to his flight school, and eventually to Hilliard himself, he portrayed himself as an innocent business investor, a retired Florida businessman whose only link to the 9/11 tragedy was a purely incidental one as an investor. Talk about too strange for words. The Reverend Jerry Falwell took $1 million a decade ago from Wally Hilliard. Yet listen to who Falwell blamed 9/11 on 3 years ago.
I really believe that the pagans and the abortionists and the feminists and the gays and the lesbians who are actively trying to make that an alternative lifestyle, the ACLU, People for the American Way, all of them who tried to secularize America, I point the finger in their face and say, you helped this happen.
Strange, isn't it? It's just 2 days after September 11th, and Falwell never once mentioned to Pat Robertson that, oh, by the way, he took $1 million from the guy whose flight school trained the terrorists. Talk about lying and deceit. We think Falwell's film is almost biblical. Incidentally, we understand the Reverend Falwell never felt the need to pay Wally Hilliard back the $1 million. Well, unless you count what happened out of the Lynchburg airport last year as payback. A non-existent company supposedly working inside of Hilliard's Huffman Aviation in Venice won a fat government contract out at the airport in Lynchburg over far superior local firms. We wonder if the good people who attend Falwell's Baptist Church will ever learn about their pastor's association with heroin-running, communist-coddling American spooks who, as a sideline, carry water for the Mormon Church of Utah. So we've always viewed Hilliard as a suspect. Even before we discovered the heroin bust, during an interview promoting the book, we tried our best to convey the enormity of the discovery about Hilliard we'd made to Court TV's Catherine Cryer. So if Mohammed Atta is not an Islamic fundamentalist, the question becomes, who is he? The answer may have something to do with the fact that the flight school owner to whose school both he and all the other Hamburg cadre principals went to had his Learjet confiscated on the runway over Orlando Executive Airport in July of 2000, the same month Mohammed Atta arrived at his school with 43 pounds of heroin on board.
All right, now, what if you got to confirm that's true? There are a lot of people who go, oh, conspiracy.
That's in the news.
That
was in the Orlando Sentinel. So you're a former prosecuting attorney. I would ask you if you discovered that a man who worked for the heroin king of the world, Osama bin Laden, went to a flight school whose owner had a Learjet confiscated with 43 pounds of heroin. Would you not infer that there was that the two things had something to do with each other?
What I might infer, and unfortunately we're going to run out of time, what I might infer is that drug money, as certainly the administration and others have alleged, is fueling a lot of the terrorist activity, and that in fact they may be negotiating out there, but it's to get scratch to conduct terrorist activities. Is that fair?
Actually, that is fair, but
that's not, I believe, what happened. The government knew Muhammad Atta was in Venice. The FBI admitted they did, and I believe that the reason they didn't do anything about it is because there was a protected drug smuggling activity going on there.
Oh, all right, because we know the application sort of floated around and showed up 6 months after 9/11 about getting into flight school, but fascinating, fascinating. I'm going to read this. I'm going to have to get you back on here and investigate this a little further. Daniel Hopsicker, thank you very much.
We think there's a lot we can learn from studying the glorious democratic traditions of the Ukraine. If our own country ever decides to turn democratic, maybe they'll offer to help. Last week, many Americans were thinking longing thoughts they never thought they'd have. If only we could be as free as the Ukraine. For one thing, in the Ukraine, soldiers don't have to rely, like our overseas military has had to, on election companies like Election.com, an offshore shell company owned by a group of anonymous Saudi billionaires until recently, suspected to include arms merchant and international fugitive Adnan Khashoggi. In an ideal world, there wouldn't be any dummy front companies counting the vote, would there? Hilliard was doing business with Adnan Khashoggi, the Saudi billionaire who's officially an international fugitive. Here's another news flash. Khashoggi is suspected of being secretly involved in a company which has been counting Americans' votes. And here's where our story comes full circle. The Saudi front company pretending to count the votes was also involved in the current democracy push in Eastern Europe, just a stone's throw away from the Ukraine. And have you noticed? The Ukrainians voted using a new medium, which is suspiciously unavailable to American voters. A miracle invention which allows for accurate counts and recounts done in plain sight for all to see. Those innovative Ukrainians, they call it paper. And then there's the twisted pretzel logic of the exit polls, both in the U.S. and the Ukraine. The Ukrainian first election was invalidated largely because the results announced weren't even close to matching the exit poll run by American pollsters. On the election in the Ukraine, political analyst and respected pollster Dick Morris said the government falsified the results. So how come the exit polls in the U.S. don't indicate vote fraud? Don't blame Morris. He says they do. Osama bin Laden may have disappeared into thin air, but the empire that sustained him is alive and kicking, and now European authorities suspect that Yeslam bin Laden has been lying about his supposed lack of contact with his famous terrorist brother. There's no better way to illustrate the shocking arrogance of the Saudi-led moneymen currently suspected of involvement in the 9/11 attack than the recent activity of Osama bin Laden's brother, Yeslam bin Laden. The details of his shadowy dealings, which sent an undetermined number of students to train at Wally Hilliard and Rudy Decker's Huffman Aviation in Venice, have never been explained or made public.
The family's public posture is that they disowned Osama, yet there's been a number of reported links that are sort of ongoing still.
And some of those alleged links involve Osama's half-brother, Yeslam bin Laden.
New documents from Swiss banking authorities have once again pointed a finger of suspicion at the Saudi bin Ladens. They suggest Yeslam and Osama bin Laden held a joint account in Switzerland between 1990 and 1997, according to French authorities. But Yeslam has repeatedly denied to authorities and journalists having had any contact with his half-brother for the past 20 years. When people lie, it's always for a reason, so why is Yeslam bin Laden lying? What is he trying to hide? One big clue. When Yeslam told French investigators in September he'd forgotten to mention the existence of the account, authorities learned it held almost $500 million. A sum even a bloated Saudi plutocrat might be expected to miss. And European newspapers are reporting the money may have been transferred to Pakistan in the year 2000, using an account belonging to another bin Laden Group subsidiary. But get ready to be rocked. Is Yeslam concerned? Not if his recent launch of a new perfume named for himself is any indication. It's a jasmine heavy scent, newspapers reported, and we'll have late word on whether wearing it can help a user to come clean. If Yeslam's new perfume turns out to be an unconscious attempt to cover some kind of clinging odor, it will be yet another proof of Shakespeare's dictum in Macbeth that murder will out. That's our show. Thanks for watching. Help us keep searching for the truth by visiting our web store and checking out our books and documentaries.